XOXO, got the girl. Pose. Good morrow and merry meet. My name is Audra and you are in for a treat. Well, if I've done my job correctly, you've seen a bootleg glance at the makeup we're going to be using for this video. Today, I'm gonna use some makeup I haven't used in a really long time. Thought it would be fun to play in it, see if I still love it. And I figured now's as good a time as any to tell you about that one time I checked myself into a mental facility. Yeah, it's gonna be that kind of a video. So scooch in, get yourselves ready. We're about to party. Y'all like this warm ass lighting? I'm kind of into it. All right, so this goes back to about 2014. I say about like I don't know. It was 2014. The year was 2014. And I was married unhappily. Oh my God, do you see all this pet hair? That like all this damn perfetti just like appeared. My hair is a whole ass mess. It's raining. I went out and I got Taco Bell and this is my result, you know? This is what's gonna happen when you get your hair done professionally and then it just decides to rain for weeks. It feels like weeks. Any who's-its. The year was 2014. That was the same year I had my ovaries blasted to remove all of like, well, my uterus, all of it, because I have endometriosis. So they were just like, hey, you want to see how gross your uterus looks? And I was like, no, thank you. But they showed me anyway. And so I had all these lumps removed from my uterus. That was a good time. And then, you know, I healed, whatnot. But I was at my job. My job was very, very stressful. I feel like maybe I had those blasted later. Doesn't matter to this timeline. Any who's-its. So the deal was, I had a very, very stressful job at this point in time. I was a relocation specialist. It was a very intense job because I worked for a pretty high profile client. And at any given time, I was moving between 40 and 50 people. At any given time, I was responsible for 40 to 50 different people's moves, and they were all at different sections of their moves. So you can imagine it was a lot to keep track of and make sure that I, you know, knew where each person was, whether they were buying or selling their home, and make sure that they had all the paperwork, you know, and all the things that they needed to be able to do all that shit, right? And then also at home, my husband at the time was very, very deep into his alcoholism, and there was not a lot I could do there. So it was like between work and home, I had a lot of stress and there was really no place to go. Now I know people will be like, Audra, what about your kind, caring, considerate mother, mom at home? Well, if you have ever been in a relationship with someone who has an addiction, you will know that you do kind of everything possible to keep that addiction from being like truly known to everyone else. Because not only are you embarrassed and stressed about it, but the other person is too. So the other person who has the addiction is embarrassed by their behavior, but like not enough to stop. And that's a whole other thing. But he was very, very, very deep into his addiction. And so I felt very much alone, not even on an island, because at least an island would have been nice. But I did feel like very much solo stelos. Like I just felt like there was nobody to talk to. There was no help for me. There was nothing I could do. And I just began to get more and more stressed, and like my intrusive thoughts, you know, like they have those jokes on TikTok about your intrusive thoughts. Like mine weren't doing so good, to the point where I felt like I was really going to do that. Like at one point I really thought I was going to drive my car through my work building because I hated everything so much, and I hated my boss too at the time because I had just gotten a new supervisor, and I hated her. And it was terrible because I liked her at one point in time before she became my supervisor. She used to be on the side of the consultants, and then she became a supervisor and just became a total fucking bitch. And it was just really unfortunate. Like because at first I was just like, is it me? Am I the only one noticing this? Am I the asshole? And it turned out, no, it wasn't just me. Other people noticed it as well. So I was like, okay, well, I feel a little bit better knowing it's not like just me having this problem, right? I'm gonna put a little bit of sparkle on this. Let's just put that sparkle right in here. And so with virtually kind of in my thoughts at that point in time, like really nowhere to go, I checked myself into, I can't even really call it a mental health facility to be exact, because they did all things, especially in Texas, but around the country, it's harder to find. It's fairly difficult to find like fully, oh, there we go. I like that. I like that better. Okay. It's very difficult to find like completely for mental health facilities. It's fairly difficult to find them because of the fact that the laws changed, especially after they figured out or found out, or I don't know if they found out, it just became public. We'll say public because I feel like people knew what was going on in those facilities previously. And so once they knew that people were being abused in these facilities, they kind of shut them down. And so for the most part, you have a catch-all. It's going to include addiction as well as mental health, which does make it honestly weird because of the fact that it feels like there's two different parties happening. One of them is like, you know, people who have drug issues, and yes, they definitely need help, and they also need people to talk to, but we're all kind of like, sometimes it's just difficult for all of us to communicate with one another because we have completely separate problems. Although I will say that sometimes one leads to the other, right? And it's like once the drug problem is tackled, then they can actually tackle their mental health. So it's like, I get it, right? But at the same time, it was an interesting experience. So basically, because I had no place to go between home and work, I checked myself into a mental health facility. I didn't really know what to say to my husband at the time, just that I felt bad. Because like, what was I gonna tell him that he would actually listen to or really do anything about? Because he was an alcoholic. So there wasn't gonna be a lot of help coming from his direction, you know what I mean? And so I just knew that I felt terrible every day and I was living a very miserable experience. So in I went. And let me just tell you, that is a hell of an experience. Like, I cannot lie. It's very interesting. As I said, it was very much this sensation of like all of us being in the same place, regardless of what was going on with us. And so you get checked in and it's really cold in those facilities. I really wish that I get why it's cold, because if you have people coming down from drugs, they may be very, very uncomfortable. So like keeping it nice and chilly is fine. But like I was like freezing my ass off in there. I hadn't started going through the change like I am now. And you know, I'm wearing a hoodie because I'm like wishing for fall. It's actually really hot. I'm like, it's like not really hot, but it's raining in Texas. So anyway, I'm in there and we're all like, we do like little groups and things. And I'm in a room with somebody, and like, this is where I really learned how like shit the American healthcare system is, because one of my roommates was in there, like, well, my only roommate, but my roommate was there, and the real reason that she had kind of suffered, I would say, a break was literally because her doctor had put her on a medication for her anxiety. And then just took her off of it, like unceremoniously. So she had like a break. She was not doing so hot. It resulted in some self-harm. And I was just like, so wait, your doctor causes this problem and now you have to be here. Okay. Um, par for the course. But she was really cool. She was really cool. We kept in touch for a little while after, but eventually we stopped, talking because we just had different goals in life. And I'm one of those people that accepts that about friendships, that like sometimes you just have different goals, or you're just like, you were just friends for that time, and we were friends for that time. And so that's perfectly acceptable behavior. Like, I don't get mad at people for that. I'm like, no, we were friends for that. I'm like that. I feel like there's a lot of people in my life who it's like, we were friends for that time. We're not friends anymore. Like, not like I wouldn't, do anything nice to you, but like, I'm probably not gonna go to your weddings and things like that, because like, that's not really the level of our friendship anymore. But we would have to go, when you first get there, you have to go to the group things. Like, you have to. They come and they wake you up and make you go. Now, at first you can kind of like say you don't want to go, but the problem is if you say you don't want to go, then they won't let you out. And here's where things get, so I don't think I fully understood that when I checked myself in, it was gonna be like the Roach Motel, like I could not check myself out. And I think that is one of the most frustrating things for me about a lot of mental health facilities that are around the country. Is just like, if like I was cold and I was uncomfortable, and plus I just started to realize like, I don't think that this is my problem. I have other issues going on. But it was too late now and I wasn't allowed to leave. So I was just like stuck here to like do things. However, it did result in some really good things. And one of them wasn't my diagnosis because they were incorrect. But a big thing that really helped me was that in group, I could talk about what I was going through living with an alcoholic. I could talk about all of the stresses of being with somebody who I didn't know how they were gonna behave. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely hate the show Intervention, because the show Intervention, not only do they take advantage of people, but they're like documenting addicts who are, for the most part, at rock bottom. They are documenting non-functioning addicts, and I don't know if that's the correct term, but they're documenting addicts who can't really hold a job for the most part. They are having difficulties just like being able to do anything. They have sunk so far into their addiction that like their ability to take care of themselves is severely lacking, right? And the show profits off of these people. It also gives like this vision of getting better and getting sober in these like facilities as if everyone has access to them, and they don't. Those facilities are extremely expensive. So like us normal folks couldn't afford it. And that's what I mean by I feel like they take advantage of people, because honestly, the only way the majority of these people could afford this treatment is if, and only if, they agreed to be on a show like this. You know what I mean? Like, if they agree to be on a show like this, then of course they're going to be able to afford this treatment because of the fact that the show is going to pay for it. You know what I mean? But otherwise, these people wouldn't be able to afford it. So it's like, one half is like, good, these people are able to get help for their addiction, but also like at what cost? Like, they had to be basically humiliated. And I feel like there was a lot of people watching that show not with an eye of like, oh, that's terrible and addiction is ruining the country. I feel like people were watching it, glad that's not me, and can you believe this shit, and if this were me, if that person was in my life, this is what I do. And that's super easy to say, but like when I was in the facility, I got to really express where I was like, living with an addict is very difficult because you can't, you make yourself, especially if they weren't a full-blown or you were unaware that they were an addict really in the first place, And especially with things like alcohol is very difficult because so many people drink recreationally and all of this stuff. And when you're younger, especially in your 20s, we don't really know what what addiction looks like in that sense. Like when it comes to substances we all have access to easily, like you can walk into any gas station and have alcohol, you know what I mean? And it's not a big deal. You can walk into a gas station, you can pick up alcohol. There's nothing wrong with it, you know? So we don't know. And especially because they use terms like drinking problem as if the drinking is the problem. And it's like, no, it's the addiction. It's not like, yes, they are drinking, but like, it's not the drinking. It's the addiction. Calling it a drinking problem is like making it sound very small and like it's not a problem. Like it's just like, oh, well, if they only have a little bit of a drinking problem. And I feel like we did that so that alcohol just doesn't sound bad. Like we don't say that about any other, like nobody says somebody has a heroin problem. They're just like, they're an addict. And we're very careful around alcohol to like not use the terms addict, but they're addicts. So, and this is not to demonize anybody. This is just me talking about my experience. So in the mental health facility, I was really able to like unpack and talk about what it was like living with him. And I would just kind of, in these like group sessions, really talk about how I felt responsible for him, how I felt like I had to be there for him and do this and that. And that was the place that really put me onto and taught me that like I'm not responsible for him like that. And I feel like if I hadn't have been in that facility at all, like I would not have registered and grasped that in my mind that like I'm not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for how he behaves. I am responsible for how I behave. I am responsible for me getting better. And the things that I could do to just kind of avoid situations and just kind of like learning how to like navigate this life that I now had with him. And it was really, really helpful because I hadn't been able to talk to really anybody about what I was going through, especially in a state like Texas where everybody drinks all the time. For like literally any reason. It's like, oh my God, guys, it's fucking Tuesday. Like, ugh. So anyways, so it was hard to like talk to anybody because I don't feel like people understood and would understand that I was like, no, it's not just that he drinks. It's who he becomes when he drinks as well. Like, I never know who it is I'm getting, because he had a few different characters, you know? There was just like the happy-go-lucky drunk who was easy to deal with. And then, you know, there was grabby drunk who I had to like fend off and fight off often. And then there was mean drunk. And for a short period of time, there was I like to play with my guns drunk. That ended after the shotgun went off in our house, put a hole in the wall. I was right next to him. Luckily, the gun was pointed that way instead of in my general direction. But we had to walk outside so that nobody in the neighborhood thought he had killed me. Because we didn't want nobody wants the cops called. You're like, no, we're like, he's just drunkenly playing with guns. Don't worry about that. So I was able to really come to terms with and come to grips with the fact that I live with an alcoholic. And, you know, even my mom, who I hadn't said anything to really about how bad it was, my mom had to see how bad it was for the first time when I was in the facility, and the first time that he was able to come visit. He was well smashed. And, you know, my mom was just kind of looking at him like, wow, dude, like, your wife is in a mental health facility and you are not helping right now. But he couldn't help, you know what I mean? This palette is just like not as in depth as I'd like it to be. And I think like it's pretty enough, but I kind of wish it were more. Like, I'm glad I'm playing with it now because I think this might be one that I just don't keep because it just doesn't have the depth and dimension I want out of it. Anywho's, it's back to the story. So while I was in there, I was able to like learn how I didn't have to be responsible for him anymore. How I didn't have to keep taking care of him. It's not like I got out and immediately stopped, but I started to like gain control and like gain myself back. I started to get my self-confidence back, my self-esteem back, because one of the things that was really important that I learned while I was in there was that nobody else was gonna help me heal. You know what I mean? Nobody else, he was not gonna help me heal because he didn't remember the things that he had done. He had no idea what he had done. And he didn't even know that like at this point in time, he was a major source of stress for my mental health. One of the reasons my mental health was deteriorating so badly is because I no longer had, and don't think that I ever had really, like maybe for a short period of time, a partner in our relationship. And so being in that mental health facility and being able to talk through those things and being able to like kind of work through the reality that like, I am one person. I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. At the time, I'm like, I am your wife. I'm not going to fix all this, and I shouldn't have to. Especially because previously he would go through these phases where he would insist that he had figured out why he was drinking. And then collectively, we would stop drinking until he was drinking again because he'd figured it out. Like the problem, and he's now solved the problem. One day it was an existential crisis. Next day it was the relationship with his family. Whatever it was, we were constantly on this roller coaster. And a lot of this is like, where I definitely take responsibility is that like, I made a lot of mistakes in continuing a relationship with him when I really shouldn't have. Like long before we got married, I should have not continued this relationship because there were just things that like I just didn't understand or know, right? There were things I just didn't know. And like things I didn't know about him, things I didn't know about his family, things that I wish that I had paid more attention to instead of excusing this shit. But I was young and I was black. I'm still black. And I didn't fully understand at the time, but I was coming to realizations. I was coming to realizations about, you know, myself, and what I had done in my life and how I had allowed myself to feel like this was gonna be the only partner that I could get because no one likes black girls, he liked me, and like that was gonna be like all that I could get. You know what I mean? Like that's it, this is all you can get is this guy, so you know, deal with it. That's before I was even fully, at the time I was just like, oh, I'm bisexual, like whatever. That's before I even really fully knew how to like handle my own sexuality in a lot of ways. And so I feel like if I hadn't have gone to the mental health facility, like I would not have started to grow as a person. So it's like when I got out, I completely distanced myself. Like I just started living my life without him. I began my life being like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're no longer waiting for the moment that he sobers up and we can live a life together. I was like, we're not waiting for that moment anymore because that moment, first of all, may not ever exist. I don't know when that's gonna happen. I started getting my life together and I started just like loving me. You know what I mean? I started being like, baby, ain't nobody gonna love you like you love yourself. No one. No one's gonna love you like you love yourself. And one of the reasons that it took me so long to even understand his addiction, right, is because I wasn't around other people who had addictions who could explain it and really let me know that like, yeah, like I had an inkling, right? And this is going all the way back. This is all over the place because this is how my mind works. But this is one of the reasons that I absolutely hated like intervention so much in shows like it, because they always show everybody at their rock bottom. They very rarely show the people who are living with folks who, let's get real, are functioning addicts. My ex-husband was a functioning alcoholic. He got up every day and went to work on time, for the most part, paid bills, mowed the lawn, or paid someone to do that. He did all of the things. The thing was, every day he got drunk, fall down, like just completely, it was like, bye. Like that was gonna be the thing every day. And I did not understand about that. And I feel like there's not enough depictions or recognition of functioning addicts and the people who live with them. Especially with alcohol, it's so hard when you meet somebody in your 20s, because a lot of us, I'm not gonna say we're all getting smashed, a lot of us are getting smashed. It's our first time, away from home. We're able to like legally purchase alcohol. But like we've gone to frat parties and dorm parties, and we've been able to do all of this stuff. And then once you're actually 21, then you're able to buy it, you're able to go to a club. We're just like out there doing all this stuff. And it wasn't unusual, especially very young, because of like the habits of binge drinking. It was not unusual to like have a full-time job at 23 and going out on a Monday night, you know what I mean? Getting smashed, upchucking, and then getting to work on time on Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like that shit was not unusual. So you just didn't clock it as an issue. The older you get, the harder it is for you to discern like what an addiction, like an alcohol addiction looks like. And I just knew that I was living with somebody that I didn't recognize anymore. And it was very frustrating. And I felt like I had to put my entire life on hold to be around them. I think we're done with the makeup look, so I'm gonna move back and just talk. That's what we're gonna do. I learned to live my life independently of him. And I feel like by the time he was ready to sober up, it was far too late for us, because being in that mental health facility did so much for my self-esteem, for how I viewed the world, for how I viewed myself. I stopped beating myself up that I wasn't able to like magically get him to stop drinking. I stopped beating myself up that I didn't have to keep trying to take care of him. I did not have to hide the keys from him anymore. Like if he was gonna drive around, it really wasn't on me anymore, because I cannot continue to try to control another human being at my own expense. I did what I could, and I told him multiple times, but there was nothing I could do. When he got a DWI and he did go to jail, like that really should have been like the time that I left. I just didn't, because I was still in this mindset of like, you can't leave someone when they're down. You can't leave someone when they're down. And it turns out they can. But like, but when he turned to me, after he had sobered up, I think one of the things that really got to me was I thought that this would be, not only our time, but my turn. I really thought, okay, now it is my turn to pursue the things that I want to do. Because for the past 6 years, basically, I've been going back and forth with someone who, I'm not gonna say is a narcissist, but displayed narcissistic tendencies. But I've been going back and forth with someone who, has displayed narcissistic tendencies. And I thought it was all due to the alcohol, right? Because obviously I wasn't paying attention at the beginning of this relationship, because I hadn't been paying attention. But once he got sober, it felt very much like, one, we couldn't talk about all the ways in which he had harmed me. I was afraid to do it because I was afraid it was going to cause him issue or problem. And also he really did make it clear that like he didn't want to rehash those things, because I'm not that person anymore. So it was just very ugh. And I think the hardest thing for him was that I just continued to live without him. I would go out with my friends and he was at first very upset about this because he hadn't noticed before when he was drinking that I'd stopped going out with him. I stopped going out with him because I honestly was giving myself alcohol poisoning, because if you've never lived with someone who is an alcoholic, you don't know what it's like to not know if it's going to be their fun, happy selves or their angry, get in a fight selves. And honestly, a lot of them are going to get angry, and specifically my ex-husband, if I am sober and he is drunk, because we're two different wavelengths, we can't communicate. It would always end in, drunk fights basically. And to avoid drunk fights, I would just drink as much as I possibly could, which resulted in me throwing up a lot. And those were the things that I didn't realize I was doing, right? And if I hadn't checked myself into the mental health facility, I would not have realized how much I was continuing to not only enable him, but enable myself to continue to pretend that everything was okay. Once I got out of there, I was able to start talking to my mom about, his drinking and what it was doing. And I was also able to stand up for myself and stop letting all the little bullshit things that he would do bring me down anymore. I just started being like, you're just whoever. You're just whoever to me. And the thing was, when you are married to an addict, when you are in a relationship with an addict, one of the hardest things that you have to realize is that no one else is going to help you heal in this relationship. Number one, because they often don't even remember what they have done to hurt you. They have no idea what they've done. Even if you tell them about it, and even if they say that they're sorry, it doesn't fix it, because they don't remember. They don't, they can't, how can you be sorry for something you don't remember doing? You know what I mean? There is a level where it's you can apologize, but can you? Can you apologize? Can you? Because you don't remember doing this. You don't remember the things you said. You don't remember the things you did. You apologizing isn't gonna fix it. And once I realized that for myself, where I was it actually doesn't matter if he says he's sorry, because he doesn't remember. So he can't be truly sorry for something he doesn't remember doing. So I had to do a lot of self-healing and going through my own baggage, and whenever I could afford it, I would see a therapist, because I was he's not gonna be able to help me with this at all. And this was while we were together. I was just he's not gonna be able to help me with this at all. Point blank and period. And I think the other thing, as I was talking about going out, I started going out without him because I could just go have a good time. I could hang out with my friends, have 2 beers, drink water the rest of the night, dance, party, and then come home, right? As opposed to when I went out with him, I was never sure if he was gonna be fun and kind to people, or if he was just gonna be obnoxiously rude to people for no reason. He had a tendency to just you never knew when he was going to lash out. And then I would have to spend all this time with total strangers having to apologize for his behavior. I didn't have to, but at the same time, I did not want people to be getting mad. I didn't want any fights to break out. And in between the time of me trying to get him to want to go home, I also wanted everybody else to just understand that please don't start any shit. He doesn't really know what's happening, so that we could just go home and relax. It was a big reason why I didn't do any new things. And I think it's one of the things that really pushed me further into my homebody life, because when you're hanging out and going out with an alcoholic, you just it's not fun to go out. It's a constant of trying to stop things from happening. It's a lot. I felt like a middle child, and I'm an only child. And so I feel by the time he had sobered up, he still wasn't a nice person. And I just was okay, all right, I get it now. I made a mistake. I am a bad picker. I picked the wrong people. And I feel the best part of all of that, regardless of the fact, he looked at me and said, I think we should get divorced. And I was yes. And I don't think he was expecting that answer. I think he really thought that he was scaring me straight, because his plan, I think in my head, or, you know, this is just my conjecture, I think his plan was to scare me into thinking that we were gonna get divorced so that I would behave the way that he wanted me to behave. He was upset about me getting tattoos. He was basically upset about me being my own person. And I did not want to go back to being the person who was just like under his thumb, who just listened to everything that he told me, and who, frankly, I was, listen, a lot better than him. I didn't know it. I didn't know that I could have done better at the time. I had really high self-esteem. And I feel like people think that when you don't think you're pretty that you have low self-esteem, but I'm a black person, you know what I mean? And we're not the beauty standard. We're not seen as a beauty standard. I spent a lot of time in a PWI and high school, and I didn't feel like nobody wanted to date me except for the one other black guy. And then there were other black guys there, but he was the only football player. We'll talk about that some other day. But it was like he wanted to date me and I didn't want to date him because at the time I was just like, yeah, I just want to be a kid. But it felt very much like I was not desirable. And so I went to college, another PWI, and because I didn't grow up in the States, I didn't realize that they were like black sororities, black fraternities. I really didn't get it because I didn't grow up here. And so I was just like going with the flow. I joined a white sorority. I wasn't desirable. And I felt like I was always doing all of these really weird things when it came to dating. Every other aspect of my life, I had confidence, I was strong, I was opinionated. But when it came to dating, I always shrank because I felt like this is the best that I can do, right? Like I should be lucky that someone wants to be with me. I married this man because I felt like I should be lucky that someone wants to marry me, right? That someone wants to be with all of this. I used to think that I was too much. And, I would be like, oh, I'm just too much. I'm a lot to handle, all of that. And now at 41, coming up on 42, I realize that I'm not too much to handle. I'm not a lot. I'm exactly the right amount for the right person. But now I know that. Now I no longer sit around trying to figure out how to make myself smaller so that someone else will want me. I will venture to say that I would not be where I am now today, having the mindset that I have, had I not entered into a mental health facility. I think if I hadn't gone there, I would probably not even have this channel right now. I would be sitting by dutifully working a job I absolutely abhor because he wants me to make money and it makes him look good status-wise that I make a significant amount of money. And I would be miserable. I would still be coming home after work, going directly into the bedroom to watch television, just, to not hang out with him. I would still be doing secret me time in the guest bedroom when he took a shower. And now now I live this other life. And I have such fulfilling friendships that relationships really, if one happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm still good. I don't think that there's ever been a time in my life where I've had so much confidence. And I guess I owe all of that to checking myself into a mental health facility. So I will definitely say this to y'all. Not all of them are created equal, right? But never feel ashamed about getting help for what's going on in here. Never be ashamed about that. Because I don't know what I would do if I was still the same small, shrunken person that had been married to that man. All right, that's it. That was a lot of words. I probably shared more than you ever wanted to know about me. I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you would, please do me a favor. Give this video a big thumbs up, so then that way the algorithm goddess can continue doing what she does best, which is push me further down into the algorithm so that I can continue to do whatever the fuck I want to. As usual, huge shout out out to my patrons and spooky bays. Yeah. All right. Without y'all, I truly would not be able to continue to make the content that I want to make, the fun, funky videos that aren't for the views, they're just for me and you and having a good time, and for also making sure that you help to keep the bats and the belfry and the spiders firmly ensconced in their webs. And also, for all of you who like, watch, share, subscribe, I appreciate you as well. All right, you know the drill. It costs $0 to be kind. It's so good for your soul. Because if you don't take care of your soul, I'm going to aggressively love yours until you take care of it. All right? Until next time, XOXO. Got the girl. Getting smashed, vomiting, and then I should probably change that word. I feel like if you put on one of Terrence William Design's headbands, it instantly makes you look better, and I am fucking correct. I don't care. I'm not apologizing, bitch. Let's move on. Woo. I'm a little acorn brown, lying on the cocoa ground. Everybody steps on me, that is why I'm cracked. You see, I'm a nut, and I'm crazy.